بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. من يهدي الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear sisters, welcome back to my dear daughters, welcome back to a new episode of the biography of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Inshallah, today we're going to start the Medina phase of the story of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Last time we wrapped up everything regarding the Meccan phase, and I hope that all the sisters and daughters got benefits of the last lesson. Today, inshallah, we're going to start with the Medina and what happened in Medina and when the Prophet ﷺ he reached the Medina there. So the Medina stage of the Prophet story, we're going to divide it into three main phases, just as we mentioned in the Meccan phase. As you all remember, we mentioned in the Meccan phase there were the first 3 years of the sacred call, and then from 4 to 10 from the prophethood stage, it was that the stage for announcement of Islam inside Mecca. And we mentioned that from the 11 to the 13 year of the prophethood, it was the announcement of Islam outside Mecca. When we are going to speak now about the Medina phase, we're going to have three stages in the Medina. The first 6 years, from the first year after the Hijrah till the 6th year after the Hijrah, where this included the troubles that been faced by the Muslims and the Prophet, and the battles that the Muslims had towards the disbelievers of Quraysh. Then the second phase will be from 6 to 8, where 8 will be the Fath Mecca, or the Mecca conquest, and the 6th will start at the Hudaybiyah, as we made Hudaybiyah peace that we want to have, inshallah. And the third stage will be from the 9 year after the Hijrah till where the people came to embrace Islam after Mecca conquest, till the days of the Prophet ﷺ in the beginning, or the early beginning of the 11 years after Hijrah, inshallah. Now we stopped at the arrival of the Prophet ﷺ to Al-Madinah, and in order to take the background of what's going on, who is the Prophet ﷺ has to deal with. So in the Medina, we will have these four categories of the people that used to live in the Medina with the Prophet. Of course, in Mecca, it was much simpler because there was only the Muslims and the disbelievers. The disbelievers and the Muslims are the two main groups that were living together. But in Medina, it's completely different, because we have another two new groups will appear, and even the believers will be different from the believers supposed to be in Mecca. The first category is the noble and honorable companions, and when we are talking about the companion is every Muslim believer that saw the Prophet ﷺ even for one time in his life. So any believer that saw the Prophet ﷺ by his own eyes, even once in his life, it's called a companion. Or in Arabic, a sahabi. When we are mentioned about a tabi'i, or the successor is the generation came after the sahaba or after the companion. They didn't see the Prophet. Since they didn't see the Prophet, it's called the successor, or a tabi'i. So the companions at that time were main two groups. The first group is the migrants, who are the Muhajreen, that the people that the Muslims came from Mecca by the Hijrah, by the migration to Al-Madinah, and the other category are the Ansar. The Ansar are the welcomers, the people in the living in Medina that welcomed the migrants one. And both of them are the believers, and we will going to see now how the very intelligent idea of the Prophet ﷺ to make them very close to each other, because the migrants and or al-Ansar, when I'm speak about al-Muhajreen, it's the migrants who came from the Mecca, and when I say al-Ansar, you will understand that those people who are already originally living in Medina and they embraced Islam. So the relation between al-Muhajireen and al-Ansar was very special type of relations that we're going to have now. So the first category is the noble and honorable companion. The second are the polytheists, because it's considered to be small percent of the people in Medina were still having their own idols and worshipping idols, but the majority was Muslim, but there was still few houses in the Medina were still polytheists. Also, polytheists is the people in Mecca, and the Prophet ﷺ will deal with them later, as we're going to have to see inshallah in the seerah. But also in Medina, there was a small percent or few people still they are disbelievers, and they still living in Medina, but they were few. The third important category is the Jews. The Jews supposed to be one of the inhabitants of Al-Medina before the Prophet came to it, and they used to live with the disbelievers before that. Many of them became Muslims, but they still present, the Jews, and they were responsible for the trading as usual. The Jews in every part they are living, they are usually holding the economy and holding the financial issues. Also, they were trading. One of their tradings, the trades of weapons. They got used of trading with weapons, and all the time, even up till now, this is their profitable type of trading. As we're going to know that the Ansar, or the people who the Muslims in Medina before, as you remember when we mentioned about the first pledge and the second pledge of al-Bay'a al-Ula wal-Bay'a al-Thaniya, when the people came, remember, from al-Medina to embrace Islam, there were from two main tribes, al-Khazraj and al-Aus, and we mentioned that there were those two tribes were all the time have battles against each other, and they have alleles from both sides, have their alleles from the or ally from the Jews, that they all the time wanted them to have these battles and to have this war in order to find a way for their weapon trading. That's why when the Khazraj and the Aus became Muslim, and the main two tribes that all the time were in battling together or in a war together now became like brothers. So these things annoyed actually the Jews, because they depend on their war in order to sell for them their weapons. So this is the beginning of the enmity against the Prophet, and the Muslims start from the Jews. Then we come to a very dangerous category that is present in the Mecca, the hypocrites. The hypocrites, actually, there was a very dangerous category, that those people who are pretending to be Muslims and praying with the Muslims, but actually when they, in their heart, they are disbelievers. They are disbelieving of what came in the Quran and what came on the Prophet ﷺ. The leader of those people his name was Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul. He was the leader of the hypocrites, and the reason that he hate the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims, because he was preparing himself to be the king or the leader of the Medina. And when the Prophet came, all these plans broke down, and all his plans changed. So he was very angry about that, and frustrated, and he always hate the reason for that. The reason for that is the coming of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And since the hypocrites with him was not that much, and they were not making enough strength, they pretended to be Muslims, but actually from their heart they were disbelievers. So this is the four main categories of people that the Prophet dealt with: the companions, and we mentioned who is the companions and what are their divisions, the polytheists and the Jews and the hypocrites. The first task that the Prophet ﷺ to carry out when he arrived al-Medina was the construction of the mosque, or the Masjed, or al-Masjid AnNabawi Sharif. Now, this is the first thing that the Prophet start to do, the construction of the mosque, and the famous story about that, how he chose the site of the Masjid al-Nabawi as we are having now, its site up till now, was according to his camel. He left his camel. He has a female camel. Its name was Al-Qaswa. He left Al-Qaswa to move until the she camel just sit in a place, and he asked alayhi salatu wasalam what this place belongs to whom. They told him it belongs to two orphans. So he bought this the land from those two orphans and started to construct the Masjid al-Nabawi al-Sharif. And when constructed, it was the Qibla, or the direction of the prayer was toward Al-Quds, Jerusalem. And this is what the first Qibla to Al-Masjid al-Aqsa. Stayed around 16 months, and after that the ayat of the Quran sent down on the Prophet ﷺ to change the direction of the Qibla from Al-Masjid al-Aqsa to Al-Masjid al-Haram, or the Kaaba now. There was various sections in this mosque. Section for the Prophet's household. He actually built for himself a house, because he has no house in the Medina. He was just come as many Muslims, migrants, and we know now what happens to those migrant Muslims. So he has to build for himself a house. So there was part of the masjid was house for the Prophet, and another section for the homeless and Muslims without families. And in Arabic, they were called Ahlul Suffa. Ahlul Suffa. They were the homeless and poor Muslims that they have no family or no one to spend on them. And another section of for Islamic League teaching regulations and doctrines. There was like a continuous teaching of the Islam and the pillars of Islam, the pillars of Iman, all the teachings in addition to the revelation. The revelation was continuing sent down on the Prophet ﷺ. This was a place that he started to tell the Sahaba about the many teachings in Quran. And as we mentioned for my students, as I'm telling them that when we are studying the Quran, there are surahs, Meccan surahs and the Medina surahs, and we mentioned what is the difference between the Meccan surahs and the Madanese surahs. The Madanese is all the ayat or the surahs that being revealed on the Prophet ﷺ after Hijrah and or after migration. While the Meccan surahs were the surahs like Juz 30, for example, most of it revealed in Mecca, and this is called the Meccan surahs because it was revealed before the migration or the hijrah. What is the difference? Shortly, the difference that usually the Meccan surahs concerning with the rules, ahkam, sharia, the rules of the sharia means the rules of the fasting, the rules of hajj, the rules of the zakat. All these things used to be revealed on the Prophet. This, or most of it, was in Surah Al-Baqarah and in Surah An-Nur, in other surahs. And the Prophet used to sit with the Sahaba to teach them these rules and how to apply them. So this was part or section of the Masjid An-Nabawi Al-Sharif for such purpose. And of course, another section for the doing the daily prayers the Muslim used to do. This was the first thing, as we mentioned. So the first thing did by the Prophet is the construction of the mosque or the Masjid An-Nabawi Al-Sharif. The second important thing the Prophet went to do it is the brotherhood between the migrants and Al-Ansar, or Al-Muhajreen and Al-Ansar. We mentioned the migrants are Al-Muhajreen in Arabic, and the welcomers in Medina, they are Al-Ansar. So Al-Muhajreen and Al-Ansar. Ansar in English means supporters or helpers. So there was now a coming new relation between two different types of Muslims. The migrants or the Muhajireen is the type of Muslims that started the da'wah. They replied and they accepted Islam in the very early days where there was torture in the Quraysh, and they saw very difficult days, as we mentioned, like the company like Bilal ibn Rabah radiallahu anhu, Mus'ab ibn Umair, and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Osman ibn Affan. All those people, they had very difficult days and years in Mecca before coming to Al-Madinah. While the Ansar is another type of believers that they are very generous, they very selfless, they just as they made the pledge with the Prophet ﷺ, the main rewards for their protection and support for the Prophet when he will come to them in Medina is the Jannah. They did not want anything else. They did not mention as other tribes when the Prophet tried to offer himself on them to support him. All of them, they wanted the one who accepted from them. They wanted an offer. They wanted the leadership. They wanted a compensation for what they were going to defend and support the Prophet and expose themselves for the open hatredness for all the disbeliever in Arabia. But Al-Ansar are the only people that accepted the support and the sacrifice for Allah and His Messenger for only the Jannah. They didn't. That's why they are a very special type of people. And the Prophet loved them too much, to the degree that he made dua for them and for their next generations up till now. The people of Medina are having the dua of the Prophet up till now. And if you go to Saudi Arabia for any reason and you have an experience with the people living in Medina, you will find them completely different from other parts of the Saudi Arabia. So what happened about this brotherhood? And this was contract between them that Prophet ﷺ make them brothers. Yani every one of the migrants was taking another one from the Ansar to be his brother, and even if one of them died, he can take to be an heir for him and take part in his inheritance until this rule after that being changed or نسخ هذا الحكم. Later on it was abrogated, that the heir is to be from from the kinship or from the relatives. So we will here we have many stories about how much the deep relations were between the Al-Muhajireen and Al-Ansar. One of the very striking and impressive story about the brotherhood between the Al-Muhajireen and Al-Ansar. One of the Al-Muhajireen was Abdurrahman ibn Auf. He was a very rich man. But in order to that Quraysh leave him to live with his religion, he lost all his money. And as we're going to say, that many of the Muslims were very rich, but they just left Mecca for nothing, just by their religion. And this is what happened with Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiallahu anh. He left everything, his wealth behind him, just for the sake of Allah and his messenger, and he went to Al-Madinah. And at that time, his brother from the Ansar was one of the Ansar was very generous, and he told him that you will take everything I have by half. If I have wealth, you will have half of my wealth, half of my house. And moreover, when we are now listening to this story, we will see how much they were generous. Those people was not يعني they were special, very special people. He has two wives actually. That man from the Ansar, Sahabi from Ansar, has two wives. So imagine, he told Abdurrahman ibn Auf, choose the one you like and I will divorce her and make you marry her. Just to make him taking everything in half, his wealth, his house, even his wives. He told him just so we can see how much they were generous over their own desires. That if a man has like that two wives, and of course he loves them, and he can sacrifice by one of them for the sake of brotherhood to another brother coming from the migrants or from Al-Muhajireen. And at the same time, this unlimited generosity being actually accepted by the Al-Muhajireen by another way. Of course, he refused. Abdurrahman ibn Auf, radiallahu anh, he refused. He just tell him, my brother, just keep your wives with you, keep your house with you, keep your wealth with you. Just tell me where is the market. I can go to the market and I can begin my trading. And this is what happened. That Abdurrahman ibn Auf was a very intelligent businessman. He went to the market and he started his small business, and subhanallah, by time he got a very rich, became very rich again, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala compensated them. I just want to tell you about this story, how much the people of the Medina think, and how the people of Mecca think also, because sometimes you may find a very generous person and to offer and offer and offer, and then on the other side is a greedy person that he took everything and he think that this person is maybe he is silly or something, that he's offering so much. But here we can see the best of the best, the two best types of the people here. The Ansar are very selfless and the offering with generosity, and on the other side in front of them, Al-Muhajireen, they are honored and they have their pride and they have their self-respect, and they are not accepting to take unless with their efforts. And that's why it was the amazing brotherhood happened between the best types of Muslims at that time, Al-Muhajireen and Al-Ansar. The Islamic alliance between them, it took like documents between this brotherhood. It has certain points. From these points, that the Muslims are brothers and one nation. Whoever is rebellious or whoever seeks to spread enmity, the hand of every God-fearing Muslim shall be against him. A believer shall not kill another believer, nor shall support a disbeliever against a believer. The protector of religion of Allah, the protection of religion of Allah is equally extended to the humblest of the believers. The believers are supported by each other. It shall not be lawful for a believer who believes in Allah and the day of judgment to help a criminal, nor give him refuge. Those who give him refuge and render him help shall have the curse and the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of resurrection. Whenever you differ about a matter, it must be referred to Allah and His Prophet. Killing a believer deliberately with no good reason entails killing the killer unless the sponsor deems it otherwise. Of course, many of these things came by the revelation from the Quran, and as we mentioned, that the Prophet ﷺ used to teach them all in Al-Masjid AnNabawi. So now we come to the second category that the Prophet has to deal with is the Jews. As we mentioned, the Jews were originally inhabit the Medina and live in the Medina, and the Prophet had this treaty or pact with them as a way that they will live with the Muslims and should have regulations on that type of living, should have regulation. And we can teach, the Prophet here is teaching us how Islam is the religion of to make all the people living together in peace, even if they are not Muslims. He is not that religion that encouraging racism or encouraging separation. And if you have the religion of the country is X religion, so Y and Z religion is considered to be a separators, or they are not belonging to us, or they are strangers, or either they are completely merged with us, or it will not be, will not confess or will not profess their existence. The Prophet here is as an excellent politician, now is teaching us how to be a successful and how to be a brilliant politician and a man of a state. If you have a state and you have a country, a Muslim country, how to lead this country. If you have non-Muslims with you, how to live with them. This is very important. The first point of this pact was the Jews are one community with the believers. One community means that we are all living in one community, whatever our religion. Since we majority are Muslims, doesn't mean that they have the upper hand in jobs or upper hand in any advantages than the other fewer Jews. No, the pact was very clear about that. All the people there, the Jews and the Muslims, are living as one community. The Jews will profess their religion and the Muslims theirs. There is no type of correction or make those Jews either to be Muslims or to be away from our country. There is nothing like that. Completely the freedom to worship whatever you want to worship. Even during the battles, the orders of the Prophet ﷺ during the battles with the Muslim army, that you never attack a woman or a child or an innocent man that is not attacking you directly. He's just sitting away from the war. Or a worshipper in his church or his synagogue or in his temple, whatever. You are not having any right to attack all these people. So the first point is that the Jews are one community and have their own religion, free to worship, free to have their temples or their synagogue. There is no attack on them. And also Jews shall be responsible for their expenditure and the Muslims for theirs. We will not having in the Islam will not interfere with their trading, will not interfere with the way they are doing their business. They have to do their business. There is no taxes on them. There is no extra spendings on them, like the Muslims. If attacked by a third party, and this is a very important point, since that you will be like us, we will be one community. We will confess your religion, and you are confess your religion. It's okay to have free that you have to worship, and also we are free in our religion. So if there is attack by third party, each shall come to the assistance of the other. And was a very important point, that if the Muslim being attacked by another party, disbelievers, for example, from Quraysh, the Jews should support Muslims. Not because they are one community living in Medina as one city, so all of them, since any attacks on any part of them, so it is an attack on Medina. So attack on Medina means that we have to defend the country or the city that we are living in. And this was the point that the Jews didn't do, and has, of course, as we're going to see, the consequences of that. Each party shall hold counsel with other. Mutual relations shall be founded on righteousness. Sin is totally excluded. Neither shall commit sins to the prejudice of the heart of the other. The wronged party shall be aided. So there is justice. Here we can, from those 3 points, that we can understand about justice, that if the Muslim do something wrong, so it should be punished, and also if the Jews did something wrong, should be punished, and the wronged people should be aided until he take his rights. The Jews shall contribute to the cost of war as long as they are fighting alongside with the believers. So they should, as we mentioned, since they are in the same country, in the same cities, they should contribute, and we should fight with the Muslims if there is any attack on the Medina. And if there is a need for cost for preparing the army, they should also contribute. And again, it's not a type of obligatory spending, or it is a taxes. It's not taxes. It is, as since we are all living as one community, we are belongs to Al-Madinah. So any attack on Medina, we shall all defend our city, which is a very superior meaning of living with others. Medina shall remain sacred and inviolable for all that join this treaty. Should any disagreement arise between the signatories to this treaty, then Allah and the All-High and His Messenger shall settle this dispute. The signatories to this treaty shall boycott Quraysh. Of course, Quraysh now is enemy number 1. And I tell you why it's enemy number 1. So there was a boycott, should be a boycott commercially. And of course, this was not preserved by the Jews. They shall also abstain from extending any support to them. And this will not be preserved by the Jews. Each shall contribute to defending Medina, as we mentioned, in case of a foreign attack in its respective area. And this treaty, which is very important point here also, this treaty shall not hinder either party from seeking lawful revenge. What meaning of lawful revenge is that betraying. If a betraying happened from any one of these two parties, either the Muslims or the Jews, so this treaty will not be valid anymore, and will be lawful revenge. Lawful revenge if the previous points were not being respected, or there is a betrayal happened. So that was the second important thing that the Prophet did in Medina. So the first thing was the construction of the Masjid AnNabawi, and we mentioned what was different sections and what was the aim for that. And number 2 is making this treaty with Jews, which was very important to settle down and to make everything is clear for them, to know how they're going to be sure that they will not be under any threat from the Muslims, and they will live as one nation, as we mentioned, and at the same time to have their loyalty to Muslims and to defending Al-Madinah, as we mentioned. Meanwhile, Quraysh now in Mecca, what's happening in Mecca after the migration of the Muslims and after migration of the Prophet. There was, now in Mecca, there was no apparent Muslims or clear Muslims. What does it mean, clear Muslims? That there were being Muslims, but they were hiding. They were hiding their religion because they couldn't leave their homes, because they couldn't go for migration, whatever the causes they have, but they are still Muslims, and they hid their religion from the disbelievers of Quraysh. Quraysh was very frustrated and thinking of attacking the Muslims in Medina. They thought that when they couldn't catch the Prophet ﷺ during the migration journey and his companion Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, they were very frustrated and they all the time thinking of how to attack Al-Medina. Meanwhile, they illegally had the control on the money and the properties of the Muslim immigrants who left Mecca. As we mentioned, that one of the companion Al-Muhajreen, like Abdurrahman ibn Auf, he left everything. He left his wealth, his property, what even if he has camels or all his wealth being left and being taken unlegally and unlawfully by the disbeliever of Quraysh and many other Muslims like that. I want you to remember this point very well, because we're going, inshallah, after that, next time when we're going to speak about Badr battle, from the reasons why Badr battle arose between the Muslims and the disbelievers, to know that point, that Muslims already, they lost their wealth and being taken unlawfully by the disbelievers. Also, they still have the aim of burying the message of Islam. They kept sending threatening messages to Al-Madinah all the time to make the Muslim feel all the time that they are under threat, even if they are not in Mecca anymore. Also cooperating with the hypocrites and the Jews, seeking their help and support and trying to know what is the news of Prophet ﷺ and the news of the Muslims in Medina, what will happen. So what will happen as a result of all this hatredness and opposition from Quraysh, and what is in their intention? This is what we will know inshallah next time. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. سبحانك الله بحمدك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.